Hello and welcome to my kitchen. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make meat samosas, and these meat samosas are so flavorful and so good. This recipe comes from my mother-in-law who got it from a friend of hers many years ago, and she still follows this recipe to this day. And now I'm going to share this recipe with you. So let's get cooking. For this recipe, you'll need 700 grams of minced meat. Here I'm using 350 grams of minced lamb and 350 grams of minced chicken. I find this combination works really well, but you can use whatever meat you like. 700 grams of onions that I'm going to chop up finely, so that's just under 6 medium-sized onions. 1 teaspoon of oil, 2 cinnamon sticks, 6 cloves, and you want to pick out the largest cloves you can find, and remember that there are 6 because we're going to pick them out once the filling is cooked. 1/2 teaspoon of cumin seeds, 2 to 4 green chilies depending on how hot you like it, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon powder, and a pinch of clove powder. Clove powder is very strong, so you just want a pinch of it. 1.5 teaspoons to 2 teaspoons of salt, depending on your taste. 3 tablespoons of chopped coriander. You'll need the juice of 1/2 lemon or 1/2 lime. You'll also need either spring roll pastry or samosa pastry. I tend not to make the pastry at home because making samosas is hard enough as it is, and making the pastry just adds to it. And this works absolutely fine. So we will be cutting these up into strips, or you can get the ready-made samosa pastry that's already cut into strips. And to make the paste to stick the samosas together, you'll need 1/4 cup of plain flour and 2 tablespoons of water. And you'll need oil to deep fry the samosas. I'm using sunflower oil. The first thing we want to do is to prepare our onions. So I'm just going to cut these up into quarters and stick them into the food processor. Now you want to make sure that you don't mince them up in the food processor so much so that there's a lot of liquid that comes out. Just make sure they're finely chopped. Then once the onions are done, we want to chop up our chilies. So once all your prep work is done, you can start the cooking. And to make the samosa filling, we need a very large frying pan. So I have this very large frying pan, or you can use any pot that's got a wide base and is fairly shallow. And we want that because we want to cook off all the moisture from the meat and the onion. So we're going to cook it on a fairly high heat. And I'm doing it on my middle stove here, and I'm going to start the heat. And then we're going to add the teaspoon of oil. And you don't need a lot of oil because the meat actually gives off some oil as well. And into the oil, I'm going to add the 6 cloves and the 2 cinnamon sticks. Now once we're done cooking, we're going to remove these cloves and cinnamon sticks, so we want to remember the number we have. So once they sizzle a little bit, we're going to add our green chilies to that. We're going to add 2/3 of these onions. The meat. the cumin seeds, and the salt. And we're just going to cook this. And you want to make sure you break up the meat with your spoon. So just mash it up like this, just to make sure your meat's all broken up. So just go ahead and continue to break up the meat like this. It becomes a little bit easier once it's already started to cook. And my moisture is now releasing as well. So we want to make sure our temperature is fairly high. So mine's on number 4, but this middle stove is really quite high. So it's like a medium-high temperature. And if you haven't tried mixing the chicken and the lamb together before, I definitely recommend it because it gives a really good flavor without being too meaty. It has like a light meat flavor to it. And I know it seems like a lot of onions, but trust me, once you bite into these samosas, you're gonna be like, oh my God, this is perfect. So definitely follow my recipe exactly as I measured it out for you. So you have to continue stirring while it's cooking, and once the water is, like the moisture is almost evaporated, we're gonna add the cinnamon and the clove powder and mix that in. So now with this sizzle, I can hear that the moisture has evaporated, so I'm gonna turn off the stove. And we're gonna let this cool, then we'll add the chopped coriander and the onions and the lime juice. To help the mixture cool quicker, don't forget to give it a stir every few minutes. And also, before we add anything else to this mixture, we're gonna remove the cinnamon sticks and the cloves in here. Now that all our whole spices are removed, we can add the chopped coriander, the remaining chopped onions, and the lime juice, and mix that in really well. Then go ahead and give it a taste and see if you need to add anything. If you like, you can even add a little bit of Garam Masala to this, but I think you'll find the seasonings are pretty on point. I'm just going to add a little bit more salt, but other than that, it's perfect. Then once it's cooled completely, you can get ready to fill your samosa pastry. This amount of mixture for the meat samosas will make between 35 to 40 samosas, depending on how much filling you put in each one. Now, it's best not to stuff your samosas with the filling completely, because then it just creates moisture and your samosas won't come out as crisp as they should. So just lightly pack it and they'll come out really great. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. All right, now we're gonna get the pastry ready. So I have my pastry here that's been defrosted. It's just been sitting out on the counter for an hour or so. I need a large chopping board, a pair of scissors, and a cloth that I've just dampened a little bit to cover the pastry so it doesn't dry out. Now, once we have our pastry here, we actually want to separate the sheets, but we want to have 2 sheets together. We don't want to do them individually because we're going to double pastry each samosa. So make sure you have 2 sheets. Now sometimes the sheets want to separate, but as much as you can, try and keep them together, because it's very hard to fold the pastry into the samosa pastry shape once they're separated. And then just cover them with a damp cloth. So do all of the sheets like that. So now all our pastry sheets are separated into 2 sheets stuck together, and we're going to cut them into 3 equal strips. So I'm going to take a couple of pastry sheets and do them all at the same time. And the one on top, we're going to make fold marks so we can measure where we're going to cut. Okay, so this one I'm going to fold into thirds. So we can see the lines here, and that's where we're going to cut. Alright, so we have our strips ready to go. And now I'm going to make sure that it's covered with a damp cloth. And I've got my water here, the 2 tablespoons of water and the 1/4 cup of plain flour. So I'm going to make my glue. And you just stick that together. Put your finger in there and just swirl it around, and it will become a sticky paste. And if you want to add more water, you definitely can. Yeah, I'm going to need some more water, so I'm going to add a little bit more water in here. So that was about 3 tablespoons of water that I added in here, and you just basically want to make it into a sticky paste, and that's all. There you go. See that consistency? It's gluey. Now to fold the samosas, we're just going to take one of the strips that we cut, and we're going to find the middle of the strip, which is right about here. And it's fine if it's not exact. And then just fold that corner, and you can see here that this is the basic shape of the samosa triangle. Then fold the other side over and match it up, and there you go. And we're going to tape or glue or stick this side down. There you go. So you can see this side is glued, and here's your pocket, and you have to make sure there's no hole that you can see at the bottom. And then we'll just add a couple of teaspoons of our filling. Remember not to overfill it, just a little bit more. There you go. So there's definitely room in here, and I haven't overfilled it, and we're just gonna fold it over. And then we're going to stick all these flaps down. And there you have your samosa, your meat samosa. Make sure it's kept under the damp cloth. Let's do another one. Find the middle, fold it over, and make sure that that is straight up, and then fold over the other side. You can overlap this corner like this a little bit, just to make sure there's no hole there. Then match up the side and stick that down, and there, now you have your pocket and there's no hole in the bottom. Then we just want to fill it with some of our meat filling, remembering not to overfill it. And now we're going to close it, and these you can overlap as well. That way you can make sure that there's no holes, because when there are holes, the oil seeps through and then they become greasy. There you go. So you can stick any little open bits down. And there you go. There's another one. Once you get the hang of it, it's quite easy. Now we're ready to fry. So I have my karai here. If you don't have one of these, then you can use a wok or a similar pan. And I've got my oil for deep frying. I've got a slotted spoon ready. And I've got a tray lined with newspaper and paper towels on top. So I'm gonna start my stove here on a fairly high heat, and I'm gonna add the oil to it. So we want the oil to heat up to a fairly high temperature, not too high, but like fairly high, so that I'll throw a piece of pastry in there and I'll show you what it should look like and how it should respond. And I have just under an inch of oil in there. You don't need like to fill it up. About an inch is okay. Now, if you don't like frying, what you could do with the filling is fill it into some puff pastry and stick that in the oven. Or I have tried like spreading some oil on the samosas on the outside and then sticking it in my air fryer, and they come out fairly good, but frying is really the best. Your pastry comes out really nice and crisp. So if you're going to have samosas, you're only going to have them once in a while, I recommend frying them. So I'm going to throw a tiny piece of pastry into the oil and see how it responds. Oh, that was good. It sprung up right away. So I'm going to put some of my samosas in here now. So this color looks just right, so I'm going to remove them. You don't want them to go too brown. These are a lovely golden brown color. And then just add some more. And there you have it. That's how you make these samosas. And they're so good with some green coriander chutney. I have a video on that too, so make sure you check that out. It tastes good with a squeeze of lime as well. So now I'm gonna taste it. Oh, so good. Mmm.
Can I have some too?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Mmm.
Looks good.
Really nice. The pastry is so nice and flaky. Filling is moist and flavorful. Mmm.
Mmm, yummy. Very nice.
Good, isn't it? Cheers.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you all soon for some more cooking inspiration. So good.
It's good. Very nice.